me in the driver's seat of the biggest Fendt combine harvester, the Fendt Ideal 10T with a MacDon header. We're talking almost about 800 HP. We have over 17,000 litres of grain in the grain tank behind us, and we have a 50 feet MacDon header in front of us at the Ideal 10T. And when you think about it, we're not steering wheel either. Ideal have Ideal Drive, which is joystick steering system. You can look forward to an Agri-Tech test where we dive into the black Ideal combine harvester. We're going to open the side panels and find out what updates have happened behind us, because there have actually been several, and we'll also talk about driving the machine. I can already reveal that comfort wins here in Ideal, because no steering wheel. You can really get used to. The Ideal Combine Harvester was launched on the market in the harvest of 2018, and since then a lot has happened with the Ideal Combine Harvester. In fact, the Fendt 10T that we are driving here is named Generation 3. So it has been 3 whole generations since the first Ideal Combine Harvesters were launched on the market. In that time, the Ideal Harvesters faced some issues. Ideal has slowly gotten rid of its bad reputation and is now seen in a more positive light. And I hope that during the Agri-Tech test here, we'll find out what's really hiding in this black Ideal Combine Harvester. First and foremost, the Ideal is a rotor combine. This is a relatively narrow combine. We have 1,400 millimeter width on the machine. But even though the width is very narrow, we also have some incredibly long rotor. And we'll find out all this later when we go out and open the black side panels on the machine. The Ideal Combine Harvester are divided into 4 different sizes. There's the Ideal 7, 8, 9, and then there's the Ideal 10. These are rotor combine harvester, and the biggest difference is that the smallest model, the Ideal 7, has a single rotor, while the Ideal 8, 9 and 10 have a double rotor. Of course, there is also a difference in horsepower. When the Ideal 7 has 483 horsepower, the Ideal 8 has 459 horsepower, the Ideal 9 has 1660 horsepower, and here in the Ideal 10 we have a whopping 790 horsepower. And then we're ready to unload another load. We're driving in a really beautiful field here in southern Zealand. And then we're ready to unload another load. And I have just had the machine running at 95 tons per hour. So we can really test the Ideal Combine Harvester in these conditions. It's a real pleasure. And another thing that's a real pleasure is unloading. It's easily done in uncontrollable speed. We unload at a whopping 210 litres per second. So it doesn't take long to empty this 17,000 litre grain tank. There has to be a wagon under the spout because there's plenty of grain coming out. I have the option to empty the inside of the spout. It's one of the updates coming to the Ideal Combine. It's not something you get a plus for because it's standard today. All combine provide it themselves. But I'm also on board with that here at Ideal. And when I'm done unloading, then I just close the openings to let them empty. And I set up before we put the unloading auger back to combine. Then there's another load of quality grain on the way to the barn. In general, the grain quality actually looks really good here in Ideal Combine, and so does the quality of the straw. Today we're driving and cutting the straw, but I've seen what it looks like when an Ideal Combine puts the straw into swath. And it doesn't look like something that's been through a straw walker combine. I have to say that. It looks really sensible, and we'll have to find out why in a bit. really cozy. There's a really good view. As you can see here, it's easy to have the overview at the 50-foot MacDon header at these 15 meters. It's debatable whether this terminal doesn't take up a bit of the view, but you actually have the option of sliding the terminal to the sides. We can actually slide it all the way over here. If we do that, we actually have a range of information down here that we can use. We'll get back to that in just a moment. The view out to the header is certainly also due to the fact that we don't have the steering wheel. And there are these boot holders here where I can place my Australian boots. It makes you feel a bit like an American or an Australian farmer. There is definitely a fantastic view of the header, and it's a pleasure to drive with this 3-part header from MacDon, because then we don't have a joint here in the middle. We can see this positioned over here on the side. It's distributed with 50 header or 45 feet. You can actually also get a couple of 40 header for the home market in North America. There are nice landing spots over here to my right. There are also some over here to the left. There's a really nice passenger seat, and under the seat, my phone needs to go away. Here we have a refrigerator that opens up here. As you can see, it's a real refrigerator, quite nice. But just like I saw many others were in bags, I really wish you could pull the refrigerator out here like a drawer. Because when I have guests in the cab, we maybe will have a soda. That's when the guests have to get up and stand. It was nice that we could just pull it out here so we can get the cold goods out. So that was a small improvement to Fendt. Otherwise, I actually find it difficult to find anything negative in the cab. It is a really nice and quiet cab. There's not much noise in here. I feel really comfortable. However, if I were to mention one thing here in the cab, it would be the terminal here at the end of the right armrest. When Fendt introduced these terminals, it was a fantastic forward-thinking idea and a really nice terminal. But time has probably moved on from it. In the tractor, we also drove with Fendt 1. I wonder if it's also on its way to me in the combine. I've also hoped that something happens because I actually find the terminal a bit confusing to navigate at times. Now we actually have the opportunity for me to turn it on itself in the headlamp, but that's not something I adjust here in the GPS window. I need to go into another window to adjust that. So there's a bit of basic confusion around the terminal, but I could imagine that Fendt has said there's no need to update it further. So we're on our way with something Fendt 1-like. The armrest itself here, it's also what we call the old armrest, the old layout of an armrest. So I could imagine that something is on the way from Fendt. That's basically the only criticism I have here in the cab. It's a 50 feet MacDon header board. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's a chapter of its own. It's really a fine header. When it's here on the Ideal Combine, we operate it with the 2 pedals we have down here in the bottom. This one above it is for the wheels, this one above it is for the tilt. The tilt, meaning the top link at the header, is located here. And the wheels, those are the small wheels we use to sit out here. On the side of the header, then we are ready to unload again. And then it comes grain. If we need to adjust the speed on the side of the cutter bar, it is done from the box over here. So you could say it is third party we attach to the combine. It's not the most integrated solution, but I actually think it works fine. There are some places here where the grain has laid down, so it's quite handy to press the tilt button here. But then I have the option to adjust the tilt by using the wing buttons here on the control handle. The only thing I miss, I've said it before when I came out of MacDon, that I would like some cutter table automatics. When you use a standard cutter table, you have the option to make an automatic when the grain is lying down seat and one for upright grain. When you're out of lying grain, you then have the option to return to the standard function. You don't have that option here. You have to manually go back again, and at the same time you have to adjust both the wing and the tilt of the cutter table. So it requires 3 hands. I would like there to be more options for more sensors on things. A sensor on the top rods of the wings, so we have the ability to adjust it automatically through the 2 different auto tickers. That's pretty much the only criticism I have. So I really think it's an excellent cutting table. And here is the 50 feet edition, so it has to be a flex header. You can see in these pictures here that it's a little bit of a hilly of the field, but the cutting table really works a lot over the field here. It's a pleasure to see what it really means to have such a flex cutting table. I just have to say that the feed to the machine is a pleasure to see, even here in an upright position, and it's always said that all combines and all cutting tables can wear out. But this one, it just runs really, really well. It's a pleasure. take a look at the right armrest, see what's over here. First and foremost, we have the driving handle here. And the driving handle, it's a well-known technique from Agri and Fendt. It was also found in the older combine harvesters. It's a nice handle. The buttons are solid. You can feel it when you press them, which I actually really like. Here we use the unloading. That means when I push it over here, the timber comes out. And when I pull it back again, I give it a jerk. Yeah. And then the unloading auger goes back in. And when it needs to be released, I press in the middle here with a squeeze. Then we release it. Here on the side of it, we have the cutting table, automation, lift lower, auto steering. Here it is located. The headland button. We actually have the option for the combines to turn on itself at the headland. Let's try it here. Now look, now we are approaching the headland. We have gone under a wedge. Let's try it. We want to turn to the other side if we may. Yes, please. Would we like to jump one? Yes, we would. When we get up here, we try pressing the button, and then the combines turn themselves. Then we have the wing here, cutting table here, tilt up and down. Down here we have the throttle, then we have the cutting table, threshing mechanism, and here we have the handbrake. And here, yes, we have four-wheel drive, and the button for four-wheel drive, well, it's a bit special here on the Ideal combines, because it's not that the four-wheel drive is constantly engaged, you have to activate it. Agri calls it advanced. And the four-wheel drive button, yes, it's a bit special here on the Ideal combines. When we activate it here, well, it doesn't engage the four-wheel drive. It's called advanced four-wheel drive. This means that the combines know that we are ready to use the four-wheel drive. It means that when there is a need for it, yes, it engages the four-wheel drive. When it senses resistance in the transmission, now we need to use four-wheel drive. It engages the four-wheel drive. And this way, it doesn't constantly run with the four-wheel drive. All is just as good as it saves fuel. It's definitely a pretty smart idea. You can compare it a bit to the automatic four-wheel drive from your tractor. Over here, we have a small terminal where we get information about kilometers per hour. We can choose for ourselves, and right now we can see how many kilos are in the tank. We can also press here once, and we have the water percentage, and here we have some yield, what we are harvesting right now. Here we also have a loss indicator. We can see how much fuel we have. And here we also have a visual display of how much is in the tank. We can always find out how many kilos we have in the tank. And I actually also have a camera. It's not so easy to see yet, but here we can actually see how it looks up in the tank. And here on the side, we can see the coupling down by the cutter bar. Now we are reaching the end here. The wedge. We're giving it a bit of speed here. And when we get up here, I'll try to press the headland button here. The combine will set the cutter bar. It will perform the turn itself. Maybe we should just see, now that we can go around in a wedge like this, if it can. If it can. I actually think it can. Even though we're driving in automatic mode here, I have the option to give more gas or less speed. Now we can just give a little more speed and see if it goes well here. When we then approach the next pass, as we do here, then we take the, first we just made reduce the speed, and then I press again on the headland button. Look here, it lowers the cutter bar. And then we're ready to go. So even though you're sitting here without any steering wheel and can control everything with the joystick steering, it's actually also possible for the combine harvester itself to turn on the headland. So you could say that in this wedge here, I probably won't be touching Ideal drive, the joystick. Over here, combine harvester handles. We're dealing with the buttons here on the side. Over here, we have the adjustment of the concave clearance and the upper and lower sieves and so on. We adjust it over here and we can get an overview of the current settings up here on the terminal. When we're driving here, we're using this Harvest Plus. And Harvest Plus is a series of automations that optimize the combine harvester. It's such that the demo machine here is equipped with Ideal Harvest. And Ideal Harvest, it's this optimization program where the combine harvester is optimized based on a wide range of parameters. We're not using it today. It's like this. It's demo machine here. And we've jumped on today where we're running a fantastically beautiful wheat field here. And the rain gauge we're running on, they also have to run it themselves. So we're sharing the machine a bit throughout the day today. And that's why we're using this Harvest Plus instead. And it actually works quite well. Harvest Plus, we can see, is engaged when we push the joystick to the right. Just like that, as when we need to have cruise control in the Fendt tractor. It lights up green here. And then there are a number of harvest conditions. We've determined that we must run from at least 2.5 up to 5. And then you can see here the combine harvester runs according to how much it fills up. And down here, yes, we have an aggressiveness. And it's actually really, really nice that you can adjust the aggressiveness up or down. This indeed allows for the option of whether you think the thresher reacts quickly or slowly. And usually when I operate something like this, I always feel it reacts a bit too slowly. But right here, I actually think it works fine. We are operating with an aggressiveness level of 7 out of 10. So I actually think that this Harvest Plus works quite well. You can see over here on the iPad that we have a wide range of information. Here we can see the separation on the rotor, and down here we can see the sieves. And it's actually quite nice that we can see where the separation occurs. This helps us optimize the thresher. For example, we know how much air we need to apply to the machine and similar adjustments. And how does the combine harvester figure this out? Well, it's a long series of sensors. And we can go out and talk more about it when we open the side panels on the machine. You can see here that there are different options for displaying how the game and wear occur through the combine harvester. It's quite nice that we have the opportunity for this over here. So, we can see right now that through its market we yield 11.1 tons. That's actually really impressive. Now we're just coming out into a wedge here, but we can see that we're also threshing some grain, and it was actually an impressive 95 tons per hour just before. So it's really something fine that fits this ideal 10-10.50 available MacDon. Now we've come to the fortunate situation where I have to go out on the road with the combine harvester. It's such that we have to harvest at a neighbor's just over here. And I'm actually really happy about that, because then I get to try this Ideal drive on the road. There's no doubt that it's truly enjoyable here in the field. So I must say, it's something you quickly get used to, that it's not something right in the combine harvester. I'm a bit more excited about how it will drive when we hit the highway. The combine harvester can drive at 32 kilometers per hour, and it's something like the faster you drive, the slower it reacts. Ideal drive control handle. So it proves that now we need to get up and have the header at the header wagon, and then we need to get out on the road. It will definitely be exciting to try this out. Ready on the road. I would probably say that it went really well driving with the joystick steering at low speeds when you're driving a harvester. It's also doing well right now at 24 kilometers per hour in the field, down the spray track. I'm a bit curious about how precise it will be when we hit the road with this Ideal drive, but we'll find out in 10 seconds. It's a bit like this, that there are many wheel loaders driving with it. So, if you're used to driving a wheel loader, it's good that you are good at driving with Ideal drive. That means I'm not used to driving with it myself yet. Just have this 50-foot header we need to take with us. But when it's on such a well-equipped header trailer, it's actually not a big problem. You can definitely feel that Ideal drive becomes slower to respond the faster you drive. Now we have a nice traffic chicane here that we need to get through. What's going on? There are no motor vehicles that are speed approved, so of course we are not driving 40 kilometers per hour, but I'm also glad that Task Maximal and I can drive these 30 kilometers that we're doing right now. One thing I notice now when I get on the highway, I also noticed a bit when we were driving earlier, this right side mirror, as you can see in the pictures here, it's a bit shaky, and it hasn't gotten better since we got on the road, I can say. So there are also a few suggestions for improvements to be found. It is actually quite surprising that more combine harvesters producers haven't come up with this before, but it's not really our control over it. This is something we have, as we mentioned earlier, seen in the touring industry for many years on rubber tyres. I think it's a perfect fit here for combine harvester, especially when it runs so well here on the road. I'm a bit worried about how it will be to control, whether I'll end up driving at only 10-15 kilometers per hour, but that's not the case. Here from Ideal Drive, the control handle here to my left, I have indicators for both directions. And I also have a button here on the back that I can use for auto steering. So if we drive ourselves and turn with combine in the field, we can actually connect auto steering from here. We're almost there at the neighbours. Now we really have to go up a narrow road here. But the scareboat is surprisingly keeping up well here. Then we start in a new wheat field. Now we're being intercepted by the field transfer trailer from a Fendt 728 in the front. And there are trucks. It's going to be really fun when you follow over it. Now we also have to put the straw in swath, as you can see over here. We go out and take a look in a moment, because that's one of the advantages of the Ideal combine, is that we deliver an excellent straw quality, considering that we are, after all, sitting in a Ruts combine harvester. Side panel so we can see what's hidden under the Ideal combine harvester. I think we'll stop here. And lowering the header. Just like that, engaging the brake. And stop the machine. Before we take a closer look at the combine harvester under the black side panels, I would like to start by mentioning the tracks, because you see, the test machine we're using is equipped with tracks, and that's why it's called Ideal T. After the number 10, you can get a 7T, 8T, 9T, and 10T. What they all have in common is that T stands for tracks, meaning there are tracks under the combine. And actually, with the 10 here, starting next year, it can only be delivered with tracks. But on the other hand, I would also say that since we are out with such a large header, namely a 50 feet MacDon header, so I really think that tracks are the only right choice. It provides a much more stable combine, a much more stable ride. And it's quite nice that we have a stable combine harvester when we have this incredibly wide header mounted. It's Jackson who supplies the images for the Agri combine, and they have been doing so ever since the Ideal was launched on the market. There are 3 different tracks widths. This one is the absolute widest, 900 millimeters, and a unique and good detail is that there is height adjustable suspension on the track undercarriage. As I mentioned earlier, if you know the Ideal combine and have seen the first Ideal combine harvester, you will now see that quite a few things have changed. One of the things that hasn't changed, which I think should change, is access to the toolbox. The toolbox is nicely positioned here on the left side of the machine, but I can't get into it unless I open the side panel. It's a very small detail that Fendt should fix. The toolbox needs to be lowered a bit so we can open it without having to open the side panel, because when I open the side panel, what happens then? Then it rains down with straw and chaff, and it lands down here on top of the toolbox, or on top of me if I'm a bit too quick and go a bit too fast under the side panel. So that's something we need to change. But now the side panel is open, so we can see that there is plenty of space to get into the workshop box. And the workshop box is quite a nice workshop box. I've always blamed the combine harvesters for it, and it's a big enough workshop box. I don't think you can get a little space on such a large machine. We have the same problem here at Fendt. They are so old and larger, so we have room for a full-size workshop box over our top-notch set and a few fingers and knives and the like. But it's a fine report we can go up on and circulate our combines. So that part is pretty much okay. Above the workshop box, the battery is placed. When we then open the side panel here on the Ideal combine harvester, we discover an incredibly simple machine. Just take a look. There really aren't many belts here at all mounted here on the combines. AGCO explains that there are actually only 13 belts on the combine harvesters, a PTO axle and then a couple of chains. So it's quite manageable and it's a pleasure to see. Despite having relatively complicated machines like we do in the combine harvesters, it can be done simply, as it is done here on the Ideal combine harvesters. When we have a combine harvester with so relatively few belts, we also have relatively small daily maintenance points. In fact, there are more grease nipples on the cutter bar than there are on the combine harvesters. At least they are daily. 2 of the daily lubrication points are found out here in front. They are located right here. 4 lubrication points neatly brought forward. And 2 of them, the ones marked 12 here, are for the rotor bearings at the front, and they need to be lubricated every day. Since you're already going to lubricate the MacDon, and you're standing here in front of the machine, it's easy to access. So it's actually really nice. The lubrication points, as we can see in the picture earlier, provide a good overview here, showing the 50, 100, and 250-hour service intervals for the different lubrication spots. Before we open the panels and get inside to look at the rotor, we can start by examining the power path on the machine. Here is the main gearbox, and it is mounted directly on the engine, splitting the power into 2, respectively backward and forward. And in the front we encounter a transmission here, and this is where we have a PTO shaft bolted on. This PTO shaft helps drive the cutter bar and the feed roller located in front of the rotor. And there's an oil motor down here, and that's because you can reverse the intake roller in front of the rotor. You can actually do that on the rotor as well. Before we go to see, I just want to mention the P2 shaft located here. The PTO shaft can be lubricated through the shield located here. The PTO shaft comes out down here and runs down here and drives, among other things, the header. If we follow the power path backwards, we'll just open a side panel here. Then we come out to the variator pulleys here, where the rotor is driven from. And there's also an oil motor here. When this engages, we can also reverse the rotors. It is a tremendous advantage here at Ideal Combine that we have the opportunity to reverse the machine. If we encounter a blockage or something similar, we can gently nudge the rotor, so we can gradually work our way free from the blockage that may have unfortunately occurred. From the variator discs, we move to the middle of the combine, right here in front of the rear wheel. There is a switch located here. And with this switch, we can operate our chopper in reverse. This way we gain much easier maintenance access to the back of the combine, that is behind our sieve. And it is a Danish Linac motor that is installed and operates the choppers here. And Linac, they are present in many places. Almost everything that is electrically powered is controlled by a Danish Linac motor. We can be proud to have that in Denmark. But here on the combine, there is also the option to operate the running board in and out electrically. You can see here when I press here. At the same time, some people say whether it is a need to have or a nice to have. This, I think, is a nice to have thing. It's quite smart that there's a Linac motor here. I use it where the Linac motor doesn't run. It's of course Danish produced, so it should be fine. But it might be making things unnecessarily complicated. We can also disassemble the Agnes burner itself. There's a spit and a navel here, so we can actually move it aside here. Now it's a bit downhill. It's so easy to open. And then there's access here. Cleaning shoe system. We can actually also remove this cover. There's a bit here, and then there's access here too. Cleaning shoe system and the rotors. And the rotors, we can almost get in and see through the side plate here on the machine. There's a side plate over here, and it's located in front. And when we just lift it up, we get to our threshing table. The plate itself is a bit heavy. However, there are some handles on it. I've seen that it's possible to make a plastic one, so that was an idea. On the other hand, there are handles on this one, which others don't have. In here, we have the 4 corn cave. 1, 2, 3, 4. And after the corn cave, the separation cave come next. And there's actually quite a bit of space in here because we're dealing with a rather long rotor on the Ideal combine harvester. Hold on, the rotor is 4.8 meters long. Actually 4.838 meters. That's an incredibly long rotor. And there are actually some rather long flails mounted on the rotor. And that might be one of the reasons why we have an exceptionally good grain quality after the Ideal combine harvester. I am incredibly surprised at how good the grain quality is because we are dealing with a rotor machine. The intake roller, which is located here at the front, doesn't have any position underneath. So it's not a hybrid machine, it's a rotor. And when you look at the straw after such an Ideal, you are positively surprised. At least I am every time I see it. It's clear to see if it's the Ideal combine harvester that's running. So that's a big plus. Despite having a rotor machine, the Ideal combine harvester manages to handle the straw very well. The rotor here has been significantly updated. Now there is more space at the front of the rotor. There are some fins up there that grab the material. The material is gathered towards the center and then thrown out. And that's also why we have a very high straw swath after the Ideal combine harvester. There were some issues earlier with the first Ideal combine harvesters. It could get clogged up back here simply because there wasn't enough space. So Ideal has changed that. There won't be any problem here during the test now, but it's quite good that Ideal has taken the issues seriously. Another thing they've changed is the feeder plan here. As you can probably hear, it's made of aluminum. Previously, it was made of plastic. There are 2 feeder plans, one here under the threshing tables and one back here under the discharge tables. And it is the feed table that ensures. It ensures that all the material is brought in front of the machine so it enters the sieves from the front. With this system, it's almost, I can't call it a bathtub, but there are such high sides on it. And that's what helps ensure that the Ideal combine harvester doesn't have a counterbeating sieve box. So it's these feed tables that ensure to bring the material forward so we utilize our entire sieve area. And the sieve area is relatively large. It's nearly 8 square meters, 7.9 square meters. So it's a large sieve area. The rotors themselves are 600 millimeters in diameter. It's exactly the same diameter as the feed roller at the front. The feed roller at the front runs at 70% of the revolutions compared to the rotor here. So that means if we are about to get a blockage, it's out in the rotor, then we should ideally shut it off. First, because it runs this slower. Often we can revise and thus get out of the problems. But it can also be that it takes a leap, for there is indeed a leap here on the Ideal combines. They have become significantly stronger compared to before. But when you have a new combine for the harvest of 2026, it might be fine to have a combine without a leap. Here at the demo combine, they do tell me that they haven't replaced any leaps during the season. You can just take a look at the leap. It's also easy to access, the one for the feeder, which is located here on the other side. But I have seen that it is possible to make combines without a leap. If the bouncing ball goes into the rotors, then we need to go to the back. The space should have improved a bit, says Fendt. There isn't much room, and I hope we don't have to go up and replace it. But the balls are stronger now, so hopefully you can drive during the harvest without replacing them. That's almost a hope, because it's definitely a downside for the combines. Now we've come around to the right side of the machine. Back here, there's access up to the engine compartment. We go up there, gently and softly. We just open it up like that. And then we have a side panel here. And under this side panel, we come to our grain elevator, among other things. Here it is, quite a serious size grain elevator. And over here on the side, this is also where we have the infamous bouncing ball for the feeder roll. It sits right here. If you're unlucky enough to pick up a bouncy ball, there are more bouncy balls here. But here during the harvest of 2025, where the demo has been demonstrating the machine on Lowland, Falster and Zeeland, well, at least in conversation for a while, no one has been unlucky enough to have to replace a bouncy ball. So it might just be that it's just a tail. But I will say that I have mentioned it. It's a bit of a downside. What is this little battery? This is for Ideal drive. And that's because there's an extra power circuit on the machine. If there's a power failure, you can still control the machine with Ideal Drive. And it looks like a small battery for a lawn tractor, but it's simply for Ideal Drive that this battery is installed. Let's try to crawl up into the engine compartment of the Ideal combine. Up here, it's a MAN engine that's responding. We'll get to it in just a moment. The first thing we encounter here is the tank caps for diesel and AdBlue, and the combine can hold 1,500 litres of fuel. There are 2 air filters, and it looks a bit overwhelming. But this is partly because the cooling system is operated in a pressure chamber. And that's why it's so sealed up here. And it's really amazing how closed off it is over here on the machine. But it's simply because they've chosen to run everything with air pressure. And that's why there are 2 air filters on the machine. We can certainly open up to our cooler. And Fendt mentions that just as we haven't changed the spring ball, we also haven't blown the coolers clean during the demo tour. And it's quite impressive to see. I would say it's a big plus that the coolers operate under pressure, because that must be what makes them as beautiful and clean as they are here. We close again. Here we enter our engine. We need to go up here, and then we can open this up. Underneath here, we have the engine. And this is the 16-litre MAN engine, which delivers these just under 800 HP, 790 HP, a 6-cylinder engine. It's well known in the industry. It's actually used in several of combines as well. So it's not an engine you should be afraid of. It has delivered some really fine results. We'll just close here again so we can get up to our crown tank and the grain tank here on Ideal. Yes, it holds 17,100 litres. And we are reading off at 210 litres per second. It's quite impressive. I would also like to give a shout out to the chopper at the Ideal in the harvester. As you can see in the drone images here, we started the harvest day by chopping the straw. Yes, we actually spread the material into the crown that was unharvested. And that says a bit about how powerful this new chopper on my Ideal in the harvester is. It can spread over at least these 15 meters. And of course, we adjusted the chopper's revolution so that it matches distributing the full width of these 15 meters. This is something to consider when you can enjoy the harvester with the wide header. Can we distribute the material across the full header width? It is absolutely necessary when we later go out to sow rapeseed or something similar. It is simply important that the old material is evenly distributed across the entire working width. This way we avoid a lot of problems afterwards. Now, when we lay the straw in swaths, I just have to say that the straw swaths left behind by the rotor in my harvester are truly impressive. I know it's 50 feet gathered here. When we look at the rotor in my harvester, this is definitely one of the better swaths. I must say, the other harvesters on the market that run with a 50-foot header do not deliver as airy a straw swath as I do here. It's very triangular, and we've talked about this before with the material. It meets in the middle between the 2 rotors, and this is also where there's more space in the Generation 3 Ideal, so we avoid it getting tangled around the rotors in the back. And while the Ideal 10T continues harvesting, we have reached the conclusion of this Agri tech test. I must say, it has been a pleasure to be in the company of the Black Harvest team. I have been truly surprised by the high level of comfort in the Ideal combine harvester. And here, I'm specifically thinking about the Ideal Drive. I must also say that I am surprised by how many features have been updated in the Ideal. Now, this is Generation 3. A lot has happened since Generation 1 was released in 2015.